Right, evening everyone. Tonight we have a lecture on for the IMechE West Cumbria area. The name of the lecture is What is Innovation and How to Succeed at It? My name is Adrian Norrendal. I'm Chartered Mechanical Engineer working for the IMechE West Cumbria, and I'm not presenting, but I'm leading this presentation with Raam Shanker, who is our presenter. Just first of all, I'll do a little bit of a presentation on Raam. Raam Shanker is a Chartered Mechanical Engineer and founder of Equitas Engineering Limited. I'm sure he'll check my pronunciation when he gets on. His expertise includes delivering innovation, sustainability, and product development. Clients include European Space Agency, Babcock Group, Samsung Heavy Industries, UKRI, and Kawasaki. He's a TEDx alumni and was a member of the Andy Burnham's Business Advisory Panel throughout his extensive existence. Associate member and mentor of the Thai UK North Group. I'm sure he'll give me a little bit of introduction on that because that's a new one on me. Contributor to the Greater Manchester Local Industrial Strategy, Industrial Advisory Group, board member with the Manchester Metropolitan University School of Engineering, steering committee member with 2 regional chapters, and professional review interviewer with the Institute of Mechanical Engineers. He's also a STEM advisor and a business mentor with the Growth Company. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to introduce Raam. Just a bit of an overview of what Raam is going to be presented by is over the last 3 or 4 years, the term innovation has been talked about extensively in industrial, academic, and professional settings. However, there are misconceptions of 2 types. On one hand, people with ideas and inventions being portrayed as innovators, and on the other hand, people doing genuinely innovative things not being seen as innovators. Both arise due to a lack of conceptual clarity. Therefore, we as a community and nation are not quite sure about where we're innovating, and if so, how much innovation is happening. This talk will set a brief context around innovation, demystifying a few common misconceptions, introduce innovation pathways, and provide a basic, usable toolkit to get companies started on the path of consistently successful innovation. Right. After all that, I'll hand it over to Raam Shanker to continue the presentation. Raam?
Thank you, Adrian. That was very kind of you. I do apologize that if the introduction was quite a mouthful. I'll try and shorten it for the next ones. Hello, everybody. My name is Raam. I'm talking about innovation today, and the idea being, like what Adrian said, we'll try and understand what innovation is and how to innovate with success. Now, so today's talk, we have a bit of a packed schedule with introduction to my company, myself, and I believe a topic like innovation, we need to set some expectations up front. Otherwise, we can all get carried away. We'll talk about a brief history of innovation, defining innovation, some types of innovation terminologies. We'll debunk a few myths. We talk about innovation pathways, the barriers, and how to overcome these barriers. And I'll finally give you a toolkit, which will be your takeaway from today, which you can go back and try in your organizations, your companies, in your teams to get yourself started on a successful innovation journey. There's also some suggested reading that I'm going to recommend for you guys if you want to read up a bit more and understand a bit more of what I'm talking about today. So my company, Equitas Engineering Limited, we are a small engineering and innovations company, and I set up the company with the purpose of making a better engineered world. And the way we are doing it by helping people excel at what they do. We, as you can see, we are a JOSCAR registered company. We are part of the Future of British Manufacturing Initiative, and we also signatories to the Supply Chain Charter for Nuclear Decommissioning. We focus on mechanical engineering, turnkey solutions, product development, intelligent manufacturing, sustainability, and engineering-driven innovation delivery. That's the crux of the company. Me as a person, like Adrian said, I'm a chartered mechanical engineer. I did a TEDx talk at TEDx Oldham talking about complexities and complications. And I think Adrian mentioned this organization called TIE UK North. It is basically, TIE stands for the Indus Entrepreneurs. It was an entrepreneurs organization set up in Silicon Valley in 1992 by a bunch of entrepreneurs from the Indus Valley region. And today it has grown into a global organization for entrepreneurs and industry leaders, which focuses on innovation, investment, incubation, education, and networking. So when you get a chance, go to Google and just type TIE Global or TIE Silicon Valley or TIE UK North, and you will get a bit more information about the organization and the kind of things they're involved in. That's about TIE UK North. Now, coming about the talk today, I want to set a few expectations. First of all, there will be no equations or formulas, I promise, because this is not a hardcore technical talk. It is more about setting the scene for innovation. Secondly, innovation is not a one-size-fits-all approach. We can never succeed with innovation when we go with that outlook. Now, every innovation initiative is specific to company needs and to the markets the companies serve. So this is not going to be a one-size-fits-all approach. Nextly, a wide topic such as innovation encompasses a lot of things. We talk about, it includes culture, processes, technical ability to execution, to commercial realization, and so on and so forth. Therefore, distilling the entire essence of innovation into 40 minutes is frankly not going to be possible, but we'll see what is available for you today. And finally, today's talk is not an innovation playbook. It is not a crash course on innovation management or innovation delivery. However, what are we going to do today? Firstly, regardless of industry sector or market or company size, there are a few common themes when we talk about innovation. I will help you explore these themes today, firstly. Secondly, we will look at why innovation is necessary today. Case in point, today's talk that we are participating in via webcast is happening due to the ongoing pandemic. We have all had to change the way we do things, and things that once were considered impossible due to various reasons are now becoming business as usual, which makes it even more important to be more innovative. We'll look at that as well. And finally, what I'm going to do, my initial thought was, let me talk about innovation for 40 minutes and then people will go home and forget about it. Or I can give a bit more value to this talk and give you a takeaway that you can utilize in your day-to-day work. So keeping this in mind, what I'm going to do is provide you with a few tools to get you started on your journey towards successful and consistent innovation. And I'm also going to give you some recommended reading material for those that are interested. Now, I did say it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. However, the starting point for any organization, regardless of sector, size, or industry or market, is always the same. And that's what the toolkit is going to cover today. Now, the point is, innovation is nothing new to humankind. We have been at it since the dawn of time. From discovering fire and realizing its benefits to keeping us warm and making our food taste better, to inventing the wheel, landing on the moon, and more recently and more significantly, developing the COVID vaccine, innovation has been at the heart of most things we've done. Let's just take a moment and take a look at the world around us, and we will see that innovation has been an inherent human characteristic. To be human has been to innovate, and that's how I see innovation. Now, the purpose for innovation in the early days, firstly, was to survive. Survival from predators, survival from other dangers available in the wild world outside was predominant purpose. The next purpose of innovation was to grow, because you survive and then you grow. We've established settlements, we've established various nations and all of that is part of the growth, which has been fueled by innovation. And finally, the final purpose of innovation has been to prosper, because survival, growth, and prosperity are the reasons why innovation has been necessary in the past. But what about innovation today? It's exactly the same thing. Companies need to survive, companies need to grow, and the people need to prosper. However, the problem today, in addition to all these things, is the world today is seeing an increasing growth of population. Combine that with dwindling natural resources, we must now manage how we live, how we work, and how we look after our planet. This means we must include sustainable practices in everything we do, as peoples, as companies, and as a society. Therefore, innovation today includes the added responsibility of practicing sustainability along with surviving, growing, and prospering. Now, this brings us to an all-important question. So what exactly is innovation in that case? Now, if you go on Google or you talk to 100 different people, you will get 100 different definitions of innovation. The definition I'm about to show you now is what makes sense to me, and therefore that's what I'm telling you today. So, any endeavor or effort that enables us to survive, grow, prosper, and sustain is considered innovation. That's what I call innovation, and it makes sense to me. Now, let's try and break it down to each constituent element. First thing, survival. Survival is paramount. If we do not survive as companies and organizations, we go under. There is no growth, there is no prosperity. Now, growth and prosperity are about security, collaboration, recognition, and reward, because these things matter to us. And finally, sustainability is need of the hour. How well we practice sustainability will determine how long we can survive as a race, as a species. Now, I'm not talking about just our generation with regards to innovation. I'm talking about the future generations, and I'm talking about leaving the planet in a condition that enables our kids and their kids to survive, grow, and prosper and lead happy, comfortable lives. Now, no matter what we do with regards to innovation, we can broadly classify it into 4 groups. Firstly, product innovation. This includes the things that we can see, touch, feel, and use. This also includes experiences such as travel, queuing, holidays, and so forth. Give you an example, a lot of airlines offer a service which helps us to travel from point A to B. However, what they do with their seating and the service they offer is they call it an economy class product or a business class product. What they're doing is turning the whole product as a service model on its head to service as a product model. That's product innovation. The next type of innovation is process innovation. Things that we do to make our products, designing of our systems, our manufacturing processes, user experience processes, user interfaces, interactions, and so forth. These constitute process innovation. The third type of innovation is called position innovation. Now, position innovation is about taking technologies or practices from one location to another. Now, by location, I'm not just talking about geography. I'm talking about industries, sectors, markets, demographies, and more importantly, perception. If you change the perception of a product from something to something else, then you're positioning the product based on a different set of perceptions, and that kind of forms a position innovation. And finally, what we call as paradigm innovations. This simply means things that completely change the culture and mindset and entirely disrupt industries. We'll look at each of these in a bit more detail next. Firstly, if you look at the 3 images I'm showing you, the first image shows you the evolution of the mobile phone. The second one shows you the car and how the planes have evolved over the decades. The key thing here is being able to do more and being able to do things that were previously undoable. It's not about adding an extra button or an extra feature. It's about enabling people, companies, teams, and organizations to do things that they couldn't have done before. Product innovation. Let's talk about process innovation. Now, process innovation is more about adopting different processes which provide a benefit over existing processes. This is just a simple chart where you see processes A, B, and C. But then there's a new process that I've introduced called D, which perhaps adds a bit of an improvement over existing process. Now, the problem is, between product and process innovation, we normally see a few blurred lines. There are a few overlaps between product and process innovation. Let me give you an example. Ferrying people across the country on electric trains is basically a product and a process innovation. The process innovation here is being how the train is powered. Rather than diesel or steam, it's powered by electricity. But the product is the new train in itself. Therefore, the lines sometimes between a product and a process innovation can get blurry. Let's look at the next thing. We talk about position innovation. The image that you see is a can of a bottle of Lucozade. I'm sure a lot of you know that when Lucozade first came out, it was actually developed as a glucose-based drink to help children in convalescence. Now, these associations with sickness were then abandoned by the brand owners, which is, I think, SmithKline Beecham, when they relaunched the product as a health drink aimed at the growing fitness market. Now it's presented as a performance-enhancing drink to aid healthy exercise. Now, how many of us drink Lucozade as a medical product, versus how many of us drink about it as a product associated with fitness and sport? That's the position innovation of Lucozade. This product that you see is the Google Glasses. This was originally designed actually as a fashion accessory that would enable the wearer to do a lot more than just look around. It would help people to take pictures, and in this day and age of Instagram and Snapchat, that would have been the ideal tool for the social media savvy person. But due to the inherent problems with doing something like that, it essentially got a very bad rap. So what Google did, they repositioned these Google Glasses as technical tools to help people with an industrial context, and it kind of supports the whole Industry 4 thing by reverse engineering, 3D scanning, and what have you. So from going from a fashion accessory and getting a bad rap, Google Glasses have been positioned as a useful aid to the whole Industry 4 scenario. Now, finally, let's talk about paradigm innovation, which is what most people are aware of. That gentleman that you see here is Henry Ford. Now, the reason I've included Henry Ford here is when he was not an early adapter to the automotive industry at all. Cars were there even before Henry Ford entered the scene. He was quite a latecomer to the industry. And he's not considered as a great innovator, not only because he developed the manufacturing processes, because before he came in, cars were considered a craft-based specialist industry. But his contribution basically was to change the entire underlying model from one which offered a customizable, handmade specialist product to a few wealthy people to something which offered a car for every person at a price they could afford. In addition to that, the kind of working practices and the culture that he brought about make him a very good first example for paradigm innovation. Plus, his work relates to our industry very closely, which is the engineering and manufacturing sector. Two more recent examples of paradigm innovation: Netflix. The advent of Netflix, or the emergence of Netflix, closed down the local video rental stores for good. Now, secondly, the emergence of Uber means we can get a taxi at our fingertips in most parts of the world. So this is paradigm innovation, not just bringing in a new product or a process, but changing the entire culture and the mindset and the way things are done. Now, let's look at a few common terminologies associated with innovation. Firstly, what's an inventor and what's an invention? Now, inventor is someone who creates something new, and whatever is created is called the invention. An innovator is someone who applies the invention or an existing product or a solution in a novel way to find a solution, and then that becomes the innovation. Disruptive innovation is exactly the same as paradigm innovation. It's something that results in new value networks and results in change at scale in the way things are done. Incremental innovation is basically new small things that bring about small gains with the cumulative effects of these small changes resulting in major changes over a period of time. The next thing is an innovation ecosystem. Innovation ecosystem is basically all the people, the participants, the infrastructure, and the resources that are absolutely essential to make innovation happen. Design thinking. This is an iterative process that essentially defines how new products and new services are introduced to the market. Finally, the most important ingredient is culture. Culture is essentially the shared values, attributes, and characteristics of an organization. That's what culture is. So those are a few basic terminologies about innovation. What we'll try and do now is try and debunk a few myths. First of all, This is the first thing I get from a lot of people when I talk to them. I'm like, why aren't you adopting innovative process? The first thing is, no, we're only an SME. We're not Google or Apple. Therefore, we cannot innovate. Now, any company, regardless of size, sector, or turnover, can innovate. Let's go back to the definition of innovation we saw earlier. We spoke about efforts and endeavors that help a company survive, grow, prosper, and practice sustainability can be considered an innovation. Also, Google and Apple don't innovate because they are big. They became big. They've been constantly and consistently innovating. The second myth I get is the only way to be innovative is to be disruptive. This couldn't be more wrong. In fact, most innovation is actually incremental. The problem with that is it doesn't make news because it's raw, normal stuff, business as usual, incremental innovation. It's boring. It's not exciting. It's only the exciting, disruptive innovation that makes the news. Now, for every successful Uber or Netflix, there are hundreds and hundreds of failures that don't get reported, that don't get any airtime. If you remember this image that you would have seen on social media about an iceberg, where there's a portion of it that people see which is related with success, and there is a portion of the iceberg that lies underneath the water which people cannot see, which is all the hard work and the effort that goes into it. That's what the real innovation is. The real innovation is incremental, and people don't see that because everyone's focused on the disruptive innovation side of things. The third thing is people think innovation is too complicated and therefore they don't understand it. No, they couldn't be more wrong, because innovation, I admit, is complex, but it's not complicated. And there is a big difference between something that's complex and something that's complicated. Complexities exist in the world around us. They are an inherent characteristic of all the systems that we are a part of, such as our social systems, economical systems, political systems. All of these are complex systems. But complications are what develop in the human mind due to a lack of knowledge, awareness, or understanding. Yes, innovation is complex, but with a little bit of knowledge, awareness, and understanding, you can get over the complexities of innovation and try and do successful innovation consistently. Next one is, oh yeah, we've innovated, we've been there, done that. That's such a wrong thing, because yes, innovation is first of all a journey, it's not a destination. And a company may have delivered an innovative service or a product or a device once, but in order to survive, grow, and prosper and practice sustainability, innovation has to happen constantly. Innovation must become part of business as usual. And finally, this is an interesting one. People think incremental innovation is exactly the same as continuous improvement, and we're already doing it, so why should we innovate? That's another common question people ask. Now, continuous improvement is predominantly about improving an existing process continuously, whereas incremental innovation is more about bringing in new things and getting small levels of gain with every new addition, all of which add up cumulatively to big changes over time. And it includes introducing concepts and methods and processes that do not yet exist within the paradigm of an organization or a team. So now, how does innovation look like? I said it's a journey. It's not a destination, or it's not an isolated event. So the innovation journey starts with epiphany. It goes through evaluation, engineering, execution, enabling, and empowerment. A lot of you who are eagle-eyed would have noticed that every word here starts with the letter E, and that's on purpose, and it's by design. Because the company is called Equitas Engineering, and we wanted to relate the letter E to the innovation journey. Let me quickly, briefly describe each of these things. Epiphany is where the idea happens. Evaluation is where you evaluate the validity of an idea against predominantly three things. The first one is the market, which is called as a desirability. The second one is called as viability, which relates to the company's existing capability to convert this idea into a solution. And the third thing you need to evaluate it is against feasibility, which evaluates the idea against the necessary surrounding infrastructure to help this idea function successfully as an innovation. The engineering bit basically converts, once the evaluation is passed, the engineering bit converts the idea into a tangible product or a solution in the form of a prototype, or what we call as a minimum viable product. And then the execution is basically deploying the product in the market, see how it works, see what the problems are, perhaps use the feedback and improve the product. and then redeploy it as a full-scale commercial production entity. Now, the enabling and the empowerment are what the ultimate aims are for the innovation. The idea being the product or the solution that's delivered to the market must enable people, teams, and organizations to do things that they wouldn't have been able to do without the advent of this product. And finally, it's important to empower people with innovation, because unless people are empowered and if people are given the empowerment or the power to do things, ideas will not emerge. There will not be any further epiphanies or ideas to continue the journey of innovation. So that's the innovation journey. Now the journey needs a path. So what is the innovation pathway? So the innovation pathway starts with scientific pursuit. It goes on to technology development, followed by application using engineering, and finally acceptance at scale. Let's look at each of these in a bit more detail. When we talk of scientific pursuit, it defines the rules we must play by. It tells us what we can and cannot do. Now, the scientific pursuit then enables technology development. Now, for example, when we say scientific pursuit defines the rules we must play by, let's look at it with a practical example. I am pretty sure there are a number of cat lovers in today's audience. So let's look at how we can make infinite energy. Step 1. We know cats always land on their feet. Step 2. We know, I think I've messed this up. We know that bread with butter always falls buttered side down. What you do is tie a piece of toast, butter toast, to the back of a cat, and then the cat and the bread will roll because each one is trying to fall on its end. Convert the cat bread generator to a prime mover and you get infinite energy. Now, all of us know, because science tells us that this is not going to be possible. This doesn't work. This is what science will tell us. Every time we come up with an innovative idea or try to come up with an innovative product or solution, the basis of it has to be scientific pursuit. Science tells us what we can and we cannot do. Moving on from scientific pursuit, did I tell you earlier that I'm not going to show you any equations? I'm really sorry I lied to you. I do have one equation to show you, or a set of equations. So the equations that you see here are called the Navier-Stokes Equation. So how does it relate to what I'm going to talk about next? Because scientific pursuit takes us to technology development. Now, as engineers, this is where the magic begins for us. I'm sure all of us get asked very often that what do engineers do? And the standard response is we solve problems. Now, whilst solving problems is part of our daily life and daily work, what we do is broadly classified into two things, can be broadly classified into two things. Thing number one, the first thing is what we see here. We apply the results of scientific pursuit and develop technology. What do we mean by that? That's the scientific pursuit, the result of scientific pursuit, which is the Navier-Stokes Equation. We convert that and develop the airfoil technology, or aerodynamics if you like. So what you see here is scientific pursuit, technology development. Now, the next thing is technology development to engineering application. So this is the second thing where what we engineers do. We take the development, the technological development or the fruits of developed technology and apply it in a contextual manner with engineering to either make our race cars stick to the ground or to make our aeroplanes fly. So we've gone from scientific pursuit to development of technology, and now we're talking about applying engineering in a context-sensitive manner to either make the race cars stay on the ground or to make the aeroplanes fly. Now, the final part of the final step in this journey is acceptance at scale. Now, if we only stuck with making sure the car stuck to the ground and the flights took to air and flew, that is not enough. The acceptance at scale is defined by the evolution of the automotive and motorsport industry on the one hand, and the aviation industry on the other hand. So what we're trying to say here is there has to be, I'm really sorry to say this, but there has to be a commercially realizable value for innovation to be called innovation. This commercial value, to give you a simple practical example, keeping in mind the aviation industry, is why the Boeing 747 as an aircraft still continues to go strong even 50 years after it was first conceived, whereas the Airbus A380 production is going to be stopped later this year because it didn't present enough commercial value to the people. So here comes another interesting bit. So we've spoken about scientific pursuit, technology development, engineering application, and acceptance at scale. Now, the beauty of it is this aligns beautifully with what we call as technology readiness level, or TRL. For example, the scientific pursuit is TRL 1. The technology development talks about TRLs 2 to 4. The engineering application is TRLs 5 to 8, and acceptance at scale is TRL 9. So what exactly are TRLs? That's what the TRLs are, which is the basic principles are being observed, and then the technology and concept and all of that are formulated. I don't want to read through all of this. I will be sharing the presentation with you. But the key thing to note for us as engineers is if you look at what engineers do, we really are at the heart of innovation. We are at the core of the whole innovation process. Our involvement is on 7 of the 9 TRLs, which means it requires engineers to actually deliver successful and consistent innovation. Now, which is, I think, remarkable because we engineers are actually responsible for driving innovation in all our contexts. Now, the next thing I want to look at is some common barriers to innovation. Now, the common barriers to innovation are basically working in silos, fear of failure, costs, and finally, what we do is go through each of these in a bit more detail and try and explore how we can overcome these barriers. Firstly, working in silos. Not willing to share best practices, and then what I like to call as us versus them attitude. And the silo culture not just exists within teams, within departments, within organizations. The silo culture also proves a major barrier between our companies and our suppliers on the one side and our companies and our customers on the other side. So the one thing to do in order to break down the silo culture is it's down to trust and transparency, to be able to communicate frankly, communicate honestly and frequently, and to only commit to what we can deliver and deliver what we commit to do. It's about saying the truth and working together as a team in a collaborative manner. Let's look at the next thing. Time. The other barrier is people give it time. New fitness program, let's say, we're still in February. I'm pretty sure a lot of us would have made a New Year's resolution to get back to fitness and join a gym or anything. Now, the problem is when we join a fitness program or start going to the gym, you don't really go to the gym for one day or one session and say it's not working and give up. It has to be done consistently. So we need to look at innovation as it's a bit like working out, and it's a bit like changes. Now we must give it needs. It's not fear of within innovation is an option. In fact, because only we know we do. When we all learn to life, we fell and eventually the point is fail fast. We need to fail.
Apologies, Raam. It's Natalie here.
Sorry,
your connection is really poor. Could I ask you to reconnect via a landline? Sorry, we can't actually get your audio's not coming through correctly. Can I ask you to dial back in using a landline?
2 minutes.
Apologies, everybody. We're going to try to reconnect Raam now. Just bear with us one moment. Thank you.
Meanwhile, since Raam's trying to reconnect, I just thought I might use this opportunity to promote our upcoming events. There's one on the 18th of March, Durban Forest Master Plan, Building a Sustainable Future. Again, online, hopefully better than tonight's failure at the moment. The talk by Nigel Catterson, an executive
Hello,
chairman.
can you hear me now better?
Right. Yes, carry on. I can hear you now.
Okay, so where did I stop? Where did my connection go off?
I think overcoming these barriers. I think if you go back to the overcoming barriers, that might be yeah.
So did everybody get to hear about the silos, working in silos?
It started to go off a bit then.
Okay, so we'll just go back to the silos culture, shall we?
Good.
We'll take it from there, Adrian.
Yeah. Cheers.
Okay, so the problem with working in silos is it results in a lot of secrecy, people being protective nature, not willing to share the best practices, and then more importantly, the us versus them attitude. Now, silo culture doesn't exist within teams and departments. It also exists within organizations. And worst of all, it extends upstream and downstream to the customers and to the suppliers. And it's bad. So in order to resolve or overcome the barrier of working in silos, we need to start with trust, transparency, and communication. Now, it also means committing to what we can deliver and deliver what we commit to and being honest about things. And more importantly, we will need a collaborative mindset in order to overcome this first barrier of working in silos. The next thing is people often don't give enough time to the whole innovation process. Now, how I can explain this is, we are in February now, and I'm pretty sure a lot of us would have joined some kind of a fitness program or made a resolution to join the gym. Not one of us has basically gone to the gym just for one day or just for one session and given up saying it hasn't worked. We are consistent, we are dedicated, and we do it every day and over a period of time to see the difference. That's exactly how innovation has to be. We need to give it enough time and consistent and dedicated effort to see the difference over a period of time. Thirdly, fear of failure. I'm pretty sure not one of us in this room wakes up in the morning and goes to work thinking, I'm going to do an absolutely shoddy job today and I'm going to fail miserably. Nobody likes to fail. In fact, we fear failure because in our normal society and business as usual, failure is not an option. However, when it comes to innovation, a fundamental characteristic and accepted culture is that failure is actually an option. It is important to fail because only then we know we're doing something new. Now, the key here is to fail fast, fail early, and learn from failure. If we think about the time when we all learned to ride a bike when we were much younger in our life, we didn't get on the bike and start riding it straight away, did we? We fell down once, we fell down a couple of more times, we learned what we were doing wrong and eventually picked up the bike and started all over again and then learned how to ride the bike. That's how innovation has to be approached. Approach it with a fail fast, fail early, and learn from failure, pretty much like learning to ride a bike. And finally, perceived costs. Now, obviously, the picture you see here shows a lot of coins, but when I talk about cost, people think it's very expensive, and that's why only the big companies do it. But I'm not talking just about costs in terms of money. We talk about cost in terms of time, effort, resources, and what I like to call as downstream consequences of not adapting ourselves. Think about how long it takes to do something today. Think about how many people are needed to do a particular job. Think about how much of wait time is there between your processes. And think about if there is an innovation that will help you, will it result in less time, less effort, less expenditure of energy, and less trouble for everyone? And when will the return start to show? These are the kind of things you need to think about. And the key thing you need to do is convert your thinking from looking at it as an expense to looking at it as an investment. That's the other thing. And finally, the unknowns and the uncertains. To explain this a bit more, the unknowns and the uncertains are the primary territory of innovation. Now, let's take a look at the Sony Walkman. This is not a Sony Walkman, but this is what the Sony Walkman replaced. If you had asked, if somebody at Sony back in the 70s and 80s had gone to the market and asked a bunch of people what it is that they wanted, nobody would have said they wanted a Walkman. Similarly, didn't Henry Ford famously say that if he had asked the farmers what exactly they wanted, everyone would have said they wanted a faster horse? And also, the other example is the Apple iPhone. When Apple came up with the first iPhone way back almost 14, 15 years ago, it was an uncertain market. Nobody was used to having touchscreen phones, and that revolutionized the market. So the way to look at it is, with unknowns and uncertainties, the first thing to do is embrace unknowns and uncertainties, but proceed with caution. And more importantly, the organizations have to be agile. The one way to be agile is maybe create a separate department that looks at innovation with a small annual budget to begin with to try and start out new things. Again, start small and see what happens. Now, at the beginning, I told you that I'm going to share a toolkit with you. And this toolkit is inspired a little by Archimedes. Didn't Archimedes once famously tell the king that, give me a lever and a fulcrum and a place to stand on, and I will move the world? That's what he said. I'm going to break down the sentence into a few key elements. First of all, Archimedes, the mover, a place for the mover to stand, a lever, the tool, a fulcrum that helps use the tool, and finally the world that he said he will move. Now, if we look at this in context with our organizations, in this code, the mover is Archimedes, but every company, every department has people who can make things happen. People who have numerous characteristics, numerous abilities, the creativity, and the technical knowledge, and the ear of the people around them who have an eye over the bigger picture who can make it happen. The second thing is giving them a place to stand on. When I talk about a place to stand on, it not just refers to physical space, it also refers to the level of freedom, authority, control, and responsibility these movers have in the organization. They can be on the shop floor or they can be on the top floor. It doesn't matter. We need to give them the freedom and the authority and the control to make things happen. The next thing we talk about here is the lever, which is the tool that makes things happen. So how does that work? In terms of the lever, what it looks like is the lever is essentially, as far as the dictionary is concerned, is a rigid bar resting on a pivot used to move a heavy or a firmly fixed load with one end when the pressures are applied on the other, right? So in this case, the levers are the tools with which we equip our movers to make things happen. This could include resources like the right people, the time, the budget, the inventory, and the technology, to name a few. Now, without the right lever or the right tool, the movers cannot move anything. But just having a lever isn't going to help, is it? They need a fulcrum. The fulcrum is basically what is required to put the lever against in order to basically support the lever for it to do the job. The point is, what is in every organizational context, the fulcrums refer to the culture, the processes, the values, and what the company has. Does the company have the right cultures and the right values? Do we have the processes that enable things to happen as opposed to coming in the way of things? Now, for example, there's a company which I won't mention the name. The standard process was to wait at the project manager's desk to get his signature no matter how long it took, because it was incredibly difficult to catch him, and because his inbox was overfilled with too many emails, he didn't have time to sign everything. Now, that was a standard process. Engineers used to go, wait at his desk until he turned up and until he was busy to put a signature. Now, that kind of process can be redundant. Therefore, it's important to have the right kind of fulcrum to help people use the tools. And finally, the world that the Archimedes said he will move essentially refers to the industry, to the sector, to the market a particular company operates in. This is important because once you know what you have in terms of the movers, the player, the lever, and the fulcrum, and the world or the industry you're operating in, that will help you also discover new markets, new sectors, new products, new solutions that you can offer and help along in your journey of growth. So keeping this in mind, the first toolkit I'm going to talk about is called 5 questions. It's a very simple thing. You go away and ask these questions in your organizations. Do you have any movers in your organization? And if so, do you know who they are? Where do the movers stand in the organization? Where are they located? Who are the creatives? Who are the people with the initiative? Who are the people who often complain about the way things are done, but who actually have a better way to do things? Where are they in the company? The third thing, what tools or what levers do they have at their disposal? How well are they equipped to do things? What are the fulcrums that the organization have in order to support the lever? And finally, what is the industry sector we are in? And can we utilize the new innovation that we have and move into different industries and sectors? Now, the one thing I need to tell you also is, I told you earlier that going through the incremental innovation is always a safer option compared to a disruptive innovation, because incremental innovation happens, it brings about a bunch of small changes, the cumulative effect of which will be seen over a period of time. Therefore, the next thing what I'm talking about is called defining the objective of your innovation, i.e., what it is that you want to achieve. It should be an objective statement, which is one line, which will be a definite state of the future. The next thing is it has to be quantifiable. The third thing you need to look at is it may not contain uncertainties like try to or aim to, because as soon as you bring these uncertainties, it's not going to work. And because people say, oh, we tried, we gave up. That's not going to happen. We should not have uncertainties like that. The next thing you need is it has an achieve by date and it has parameters for success and failures, i.e., it has to be done by a point of time. You cannot wait until infinity for things to happen. And then you need to define what are the parameters for success and failure of your innovation journey. For example, in this case, we will achieve an increase in productivity by 10% compared with last year's Q2. That's an objective statement. It is quantifiable and it's a definite state of the future. Another example is, again, another objective statement, which is one sentence, which is quantifiable with a definite statement of the future. Now, the thing to remember is failure is okay. It is important because it adds to the learning. The next thing we look at is you need to measure how your innovation will be successful or whether it will be a failure, i.e., how you measure whether you meet your objectives. In this case, in the first example, we measure productivity by looking at how many fit-for-purpose parts we've manufactured with no increase in input resources. We will look at the machine downtime. We will look at shift scheduling and so on and so forth. For the second example, we measure the carbon footprint using industry standard calculators. We measure the mass by weighing the new device. We measure the material needed by calculating the volume and so on and so forth. So you need to have a method in which you measure the success or failure, so that you know what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong. Now, the next toolkit is very important. It is called Who Does What by When. Now, it is a bit like our work breakdown structures and the project plan. The idea being, we need to define the team, which is the who. We need to define and assign the tasks, which is the what. And then we define accountabilities for each team member. And more importantly, I've marked it in bold, we need to give them a certain level of authority to be able to make the decisions that they need to make in order to achieve success. And then finally, it defines the time by which the tasks must be completed. It's a bit like the work breakdown structure and the project management tool. That's what Who Does What by When is. For example, in this instance, maybe you need a machine operator, an engineer, and a project manager, and a team leader, and they will be doing X, Y, and Z activities. For the second example, you probably need a design engineer, a stress analysis guy, a manufacturing specialist, a procurement person, a project manager, and a team leader, and each of them have their own assigned responsibilities. So this is this is the toolkit number 4, which is defining who does what by when. These will be available for you to take with you and go away and work on. Now, I also mentioned that I'm going to give you a quick summary of what we spoke about. That kind of brings us to the end of the actual talk with just the summary and some suggested reading. First of all, this is what innovation means. Hello?
Hello?
Yeah. Can you still hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, good. So there are 4 types of innovation. We've been through them. And innovation is a journey. It's not a destination or a one-time event. And the path for innovation goes from scientific pursuit to acceptance at scale. And then the common barriers to innovation are fear of failure, silos, perceived costs, time, and the uncertain nature of innovation. And finally, you've got the innovation toolkits, or you will be getting it when we share the presentations with you to get you started on this journey. And finally, what I have is suggested further reading. These are some really good books I've read over the last few months. Managing Innovation, Glimmer, and Innovation by Design. There's an Invention by Design. If you're interested in knowing more about it, I would definitely give these books a go, and it's a really good reading. Now that we're done with the actual presentation, I want to leave it on this presentation and asking if anybody has got any questions that they want to ask. We're happy to take some questions now.
Yeah, thanks, Raam. Can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Yeah. Thanks, Raam. That was an excellent presentation. Certainly an eye-opening presentation. Obviously, I experienced some of your issues there, especially regarding barriers to innovation and working in silos, etc., etc. And obviously, one of the big ones is secrecy between organisations. Especially, obviously, you're encouraging people to work together, but obviously, in my world, secrecy is obviously a big thing because we need to try and keep our secret in the business, so to speak. I've got a few questions from Jeffrey Matthews. It says, culture is an organisation. Its shared values, characteristics, and something. Attributes. What was the something? So the culture is the shared values, attributes, and the characteristics of an organization. Right, does that answer his question? I assume it answers his question. Yeah. Michael Agunblade, I'm sorry about the pronunciation. How can I become an innovator or innovative engineering expert? I think maybe that's a good one. The first thing, Michael, I think is to have the initiative, and the way I would look at it is put yourself in the future, or look at what you think is missing from everything that you do in your life. Think about things that would make life easier for you, and then try and devise a product or a solution that you think will help you do something in a better way, or something with a bit more comfort, or something with a minimal trouble. But the funny thing about innovation is when we talk about all these big companies, every piece of innovation started with the innovator facing a personal problem and then finding a solution to the problem. So look at the world around you and see what it is that can make life better for you, and start with that. That's a good place to start. Right. Another one, I recognise this name, David Williamson, our local secretary. You said innovation must have a commercial outcome to succeed. Is it not also the case that you could have a safety benefit to innovation, such as in the nuclear industry? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I didn't mention the commercial outcome to it, but then if I go by my basic definition, which is about surviving, growing, prospering, and being sustainable, so the survival bit in the surviving applies not just to companies and organizations, but also to people. And the point about innovation is it must fulfill the characteristics of survival, growth, and prosperity. If safety isn't there, survival isn't going to happen, growth is not going to happen, and more importantly, prosperity, which generally defines the well-being,
and well-to-do lives of people will not exist. Therefore, the prosperity bit covers the fact that safety has to be there as an inherent characteristic of it. Does that answer the question, David? I hope so.
I hope so. I'm sure I'll find out. One from Jeffrey Matthews. Is Raam aware of the paper, A Systematic Methodology for Engineered Objective Design, the P2V model of functional innovation?
I am not aware of that, but thank you for enlightening me. I am going to look it up as soon as this call is over.
Right. Ya Long Chua. Hi. What is the difference between innovation and creativity?
Wow. Okay. Creativity is a trait of people, or it's an individual trait or a nature, because some people by nature are creative, some of us are not. I am not a creative person at all, but my wife is a very creative person. Whereas innovation is a structured process of converting some of the fruits of creativity into tangible and usable solutions, products, or outcomes.
Right. Okay. Another one from Kevin Shelton. Thanks for the presentation. How will the slides and tools be shared, please? Are these going to be emailed out, or are they going to be on the website, I suppose?
Either way, I mean, I can, depending on how big or small the PDF is, we can email it, or I don't know if we can share it via IMechE Central. That's not a problem at all.
Can our assistant help with that? I don't know whether it's can we maybe put it on? Can we maybe put it on our website? We've obviously we've got a local website here in West Cumbria, so I might be able to get that on the website.
Okay, what I can do, Adrian, is I can PDF it and send it to you via WeTransfer, where you can download it, and then if you want to upload it onto the IMechE West Cumbria website, that's fine by me too.
We've got a local website here in West. What's that? Dominic Lloyd Lucas. How would you assess scale-up potential in the early stages? Helpful to do this to choose between options.
Okay. When we start talking about scale-up, that's more to do with the organization and the company. But when we spoke about the innovation journey, which starts from epiphany to empowerment, we spoke about the evaluation stage, where we focused on three things: the desirability, which is a focus on the market; the viability, which is the focus on the organization itself; and then we focused on the feasibility bit, which is the surrounding infrastructure. You will only progress with an innovative idea provided you meet the necessity, if you fulfill the past criteria for desirability, viability, feasibility, i.e., if you know you have a market for your product or a solution, if you know you have the right infrastructure and skills within your organization to convert the idea into a product or a solution, and finally, if you know you have the right infrastructure to make your product or a solution a success. That's your first step. Once you pass the desirability, viability, feasibility, or evaluation test, that's when you go to the next stage, which is about designing and developing your product, and then the scale up and so on and so forth.
Right. There's also another one from Greggy Oshiva. Of the four types of innovation, is there one which is more geared towards the future we are heading, or as mentioned, are they interchangeable? For example, there are only so many products we can create till we are overwhelmed.
Yeah, that's another fantastic question. Thank you, Gregory. The point is, yes, we can create any number of products as we want, but then they just remain products. The one thing we spoke about when we spoke about the innovation pathway is we spoke about scientific pursuit, technology development, engineered application, and acceptance at scale. Regardless of any type of innovation we are doing, as long as we fulfill these four criteria and the acceptance at scale happens, only then the products will become successful innovation. If nobody accepts the products that get created, that's not a success at all. There's no innovation there. It's just another piece of product that we don't want, that we don't need. The acceptance at scale is very important.
And one last question, I think, from Christopher Dempsey. In your experience, which of the four areas, product, process, positioning, and paradigm provides the most?
So Sorry, which one is it? Yeah.
Most, I'm trying to open that page, but it's not working.
Most basic. Yeah, I've just seen the question here. Yeah.
Yeah.
So now that is depending on the organizational context. For example, there is potential for all four of them to provide a common basis for innovation. Now, for example, when we spoke about the product innovation, we spoke about the airline seats that the airlines advertise as, which is essentially a service being advertised as a product. The key is, regardless of the four types of innovation, the question you need to ask is, where is the maximum value for your target audience that you are providing? Whether you're doing a product innovation or a process innovation, whether you're doing a positioning innovation, or whether you're actually doing a paradigm innovation, it doesn't matter as long as you know two things. One is, where is the value that you're providing to your customers? Secondly, what is the value your target market is going to bring to you in terms of revenue or in terms of growth or creating more jobs or whatever it is? There is no specific particular type of product that has more basis. It's whatever adds more value for your organization in the eyes of your target market and your audience.
Right. I think we've come to the end of the presentation. If there was a way of giving you an applause, I'm sure we'd have a button here for some applause for you. We might also, again, I'm maybe offering things that maybe I shouldn't be here, but we have some little gifts which we generally give to our presenters. We might get a picture of you if we have our secretary popping down to Manchester or to Leicester at some point in the near future, if we're allowed to. We might drop you a little gift in the post. You have to give me your address, Raam, after this.
No problem, Adrian. Thank you for that. That's very kind of you.
It's been a pleasure listening to. I mean, it's eye-opening. It's obviously you are obviously think in a different level to clearly to me. I suspect there's quite a few on this line tonight who think, well, these things are. I can see some commonality or similarity between some of the slides you presented, especially in the design field, from concept to actually delivery. You know what I mean? It's similar kind of stuff, but obviously you've thought about it on a different level. So thanks for that. Appreciate your presentation. It's been an excellent time spent listening to we provide there. If I leave it now with just a couple of notices, we'll chat later on, Raam, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, of course.
I'll send you a message at the end of this, and we'll have a chat tomorrow sometime if you don't mind.
No problem, Adrian. I think we can do it tomorrow. Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay. What I'd like to do is just promote a few events that are coming up. Derwent Forest Master Plan. It's again, obviously, for people who are calling in from around the country. We have an MOD facility in our local area, and it's been transformed in some way. The talk by Nigel Caddison, the Executive Chairman of the Derwent Forest Derwent Development Consortium, outlines the master plan for the development of former Royal Navy Armaments Depot, munitions site at Broughton Mill, Cumbria, to an attractive, sustainable living and working environment and tourism attraction, so long as they've got rid of all the explosives. Also, that's on the 18th of March from 2007. Also, on the 23rd of March, we have a presentation. You and your CPD achieve your CPD goals with our help. So there's a webinar there. All this at this challenging time, we're keen to support our members in any way we can. Whether you are working towards professional registration, undertaking initial professional development, IPD, or keen to demonstrate your continued professional development, we can help. It doesn't say who's going to help us there, but I'm sure on the evening. It's 1 o'clock, 1 p.m. till 1:45 on the 23rd of March. So have a look at our website if you don't mind. Obviously, this is not just for West Cumbria, but obviously have a look at if you're scattered around the country. Have a look at what's coming up, and I hope you enjoy our future presentations. Right, I think is that where we leave things, or?
Yeah, can I just add a quick note, Adrian? If anybody wants to talk about it or know more, they'll find my contact details on the presentation. They can get in touch.
Brilliant. Yeah, I'm sure they will. I must admit, there's a few people on there who have actually mentioned they'd like to get in touch with you afterwards. So I'm sure we'll be getting a few contacts through the internet.
Perfect. That's great.
Okay. Is that Natalie? Are you taking over, or are you still there?